This was the first building that we met in. The first Sunday that we met was on a September 13th, 25 years ago. And we met with a Marine and his wife, and my wife and my 3 little daughters. We met there about 6 weeks, and then we moved to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Terrible picture. As we go on the pictures, you'll see the technology gets better. But here's Deborah, here's Anne-Marie, just to hear on her mom, and there's Beth. And you can tell the pastor is quite a bit skinnier. I'm twice the man today than I was then. And so here's the church at that time. If you notice, none of you were a part of this picture except Mary, Deborah, Chuck, and Beth. Anne-Marie's here, and Beth's being held by that gal in the back. So all new people. So over the years, we change. Then we moved to Woodard Junior High School. And Woodard Junior High School is where our girls started being on the worship team. They were in like upper elementary or something. And they were the singers. And Mary was the piano player. And then sometimes the Lord provided a guitar player or whatever. And then we went to Castle Dome Middle School. And we were out there for a number of years. And at Castle Dome Middle School, you Sunday school guys, oh man, the best classes. This was a brand new school. So we had the best Sunday school classes that you could ever have. More room than you'd ever think of. Here we've always been tight for a room. But that was a blessing for a period of time. And then we moved to the food bank. And we've been at the food bank for about 10 years. Long time. And so, you know what? So, we're on one side of the Jordan. And now Albert Joshua is going to take you to the other side of the Jordan, into the promised land. Maybe he'll build you a church. Maybe he'll build this church. Maybe this church will grow to be 500 people, Who knows? That's what I expect him to do. We've always been involved in missions. When we were next to no people, we went to San Luis with other Calvary Chapels. And here's Deborah and Anne-Marie and Beth. And these are the kids that we're ministering to. And then Michael Darmus was part of our church. And so why do you think Beth became a missionary? Because that's what we always did. You always go somewhere. So she was used to doing that. And here's a picture of myself and Dave Johnson. And notice Dave Johnson and Chuck Stewart have no gray hair. And we're both pretty skinny. And we look pretty young. And there's Deborah. Deborah always wanting to know what's going on, So she snuck up there to make sure. She wanted to know if I was going to drown him or what. During Desert Storm, the Marine Corps owned our worship leader, Dan Payne. Dan Payne's right here, and his wife Mary. Dan Payne, he's our worship leader. And the Marine Corps sent him to Desert Storm. Can you believe it? Well, Dan not only was a musician, but he also kind of was an evangelist. So he went over to Desert Storm and started leading people to Christ. And they would dig a hole in the sand. They'd put black plastic, fill it full of water, and he'd baptize them right there. They wanted to get right with the Lord before they went into Desert Storm. And guess what? There was a long, if you remember back then, a long time they were sitting, getting ready, and waiting. So Dan had a lot of time to talk about the gospel. Anyway, this was when he came back and kind of a little celebration. And look how skinny I am there. Wow. And there's my wife leading worship. She's singing, and Bob Conti's playing guitar. She's a little bit younger. And wow, a lot of hair there. Here's one of the ladies' groups. Mary had a Bible study at our home. And I looked at that and I said, I know 4 of those ladies have gone to be with the Lord. They're in heaven right now. And one's in California, one's in Oklahoma, and I think one of them still goes to another church here in Yuma. But see, things change. And you know what? I know you guys don't like change. Some people are sad, some people are mad that I'm leaving, and some of you are just a little bit too glad. And that kind of bothers me. But that's okay. I'll get over it. We led people, Lord. The first letter I wrote to Chuck Smith, and I said, we got just a few people, but we've led some people to the Lord, and we've baptized some people, and can we become a Calvary Chapel? He wrote back a letter, and he said, praise the Lord, go for it. I mean, that was just a little short letter. And in those days, that's all it took to become a Calvary Chapel. And then just a little while ago, to become a Calvary Chapel, it was about a 20, 25-page thing you had to fill out, and do you believe this and believe that? And they've streamlined it. It's shorter. But it's not just a letter and go for it. It changed a little bit. So I just wanted to show you that picture because prove I did baptize that girl. And also she's still living. You'll see some other pictures of her. But look how skinny I am. Can you believe it? And no gray hair. No gray hair. You know, when you're doing a church, you also do some fun things. We went out to Adair Park, and Dale Smith, the guy with the red beard, taught us all how to shoot a black powder rifle. You know, that's where you do that, you know, and they have the cap in there, and boom. And that was a lot of fun. But you notice that some of the people you might notice here, Dave Johnson, looks a little younger, and Melinda was right there. And then Deborah's pretty comfortable there, leaning on James. And I think this is Beth. Is that Beth? Oh, Anne Marie. That's Anne Marie. That's right. Beth probably didn't want to get dirty. Beth was always the girl that didn't want to get dirty. Anne Marie was always the girl that liked to get dirty and liked to work hard and get dirty. And she was always the one that we thought was going to be our missionary. And then she married a Marine, and she's a missionary, I guess, here in Yuma. She's a nurse. Here's Margaret Johnson and Hazel Forbes, who have both gone to be with the Lord. You know, I have no pictures of any funerals I ever did. You know, you don't really take a lot of pictures at funerals, do you? So, but we did. I did both. I was at both their funerals. 9/11. We took a lot of pictures when we went back and did ministry at 9/11, but I don't have any of them anymore. Between now and then, I had a computer crash, and they went the way of the hard drive. And so we sent a team back to 9/11. Had some good stories that I won't go into, but so as a little church, we've always sent people out. We've done stuff over the years. Here recently we haven't been doing too much, but guess what? That's going to change. You got a new pastor. He's 28 years old, got a lot of energy. And so if you want to be a part of a church that's active doing stuff, this is your church. If you want to sit in the pews, well, maybe there's a different church. You need to pray about it. I think it would be... but you can change. See, you might have been sitting for a while, but you need to get out of your seat and you need to start doing something, okay? After 9/11, we sent our Marine Corps, we sent our military to Iraq. Well, here's the young Marine that was stationed here that was getting sent over there, and he wanted to make sure he had all the I's dots and T's crossed, so we baptized him in our pool about 2 days before he flew out of here. And that was good thinking. 2002, we took a little trip to visit our missionaries, the O'Neills, Kevin O'Neill, in Ecuador. So here's Dave and Kevin at the table with Mary at the background. And then we stayed there for a few days, and then we went on down to Peru. John Bonner runs the Bible College and was starting a little church in Lima, Peru. So there I'm teaching on Sunday, and he's interpreting for me. That was in 2002. And then a few years ago, we went to a Billy Graham crusade. This was up in the Chargers Stadium. Look, it was jam-packed full, and you might recognize one person there. It's Diane Doucette. And so we filled up a whole bus, a Greyhound bus. We chartered it and went up to that crusade. They were billing it as going to be Billy Graham's last crusade. But since that time, he's done a bunch of last crusades. So he's just going out, leading people to Christ. This is Ted and Trish. Trish, where are you? Trish, raise your hand. Look, stand up, Trish. Stand up. Stand up. You're a sophomore or junior? Going to be a junior. Well, you're really junior in this picture. And so Trish just become a young, beautiful lady. Right there, she's just a little girl. That was a family camp up in Laguna Mountains. And here we'd had breakfast, and now we're gathering to have a little Bible study and, worship the Lord that morning before we go out and have the activities we were going to do. Something we've done 6 times, I've taken trips to Israel. On one of those trips, and you always see that, this is one of the sights you see. But in 2006, and when I go to Israel, that's what I'm doing. If I'm not teaching a Bible study, I'm taking pictures, man. I'm hanging out taking pictures and everything I can. This is Pat Stout and the lady. This is at the Pool of Bethsaida. Pat Stout at that time was a missionary in Israel. She had been a missionary. She decided at 80 years old that she was going to leave the United States and go be a missionary in Israel. And last I heard that she went from there, she's in Asia someplace. You're never too old. Sometimes you think you're too old, never too old. So we supported Pat and Clay. They used to get wheelchairs that were broken or worn out, and he would restore them, go down to Mexico. He'd go to a little village, go to a pastor, and say, hey, do you have anyone in your village that can't walk on their own, needs a wheelchair? And so they would go with the pastor, and they would give that wheelchair. Well, I went to the funeral of Clay Stout in San Luis, and there were people that were at the funeral in their wheelchair that had accepted the Lord because it started with a gift and connecting that person, crippled person, with the church. And here he died, and you would have thought she'd go retire and it was all over. Man, that was just the beginning for her. So she went on the tour with us a little bit. The guy over here, he was teaching the devotion. Scott was from the Calvary Chapel in Iowa, and now he's the assistant pastor at Camp Verde here in Arizona. And so at that time he was, I think, an elder there in Iowa. So interesting how you meet someone someplace and how things keep happening. Here, just a picture of me teaching about Capernaum in Capernaum, which what a blessing that is to do. Here we went to Abraham's tent. It's a tent set up out in the desert, and half of you or part of you get to ride a camel. Beth and I rode a camel. It's kind of a funny feeling. And then everyone else had to walk. And you go down and you go to this Abraham's tent, and this guy in garb looking like Abraham greets you and invites you into his home, and you sit on cushions around the table, and they feed you the kind of food that you would have eaten during Abraham's time. So there's my mom, Minnie Stewart, and there's Mary and myself and Beth. And Beth at that time was in Hungary as a missionary, and the Bible college from Hungary was taking a tour of Israel, and she jumped on with them and came with them. So that was kind of cool. Nathan and Vanessa Rice, they'd been praying for years that she'd get pregnant, and she hadn't been pregnant. She was a pharmacist, and so they'd tried all the medical stuff, didn't get pregnant. He was a Marine pilot. That also means they had the money. So they had the money, but she wouldn't get pregnant. So in Israel, in the Jordan River, we baptized her in Jordan River, and she got pregnant in Israel, okay? And I'll show you proof of that in a little bit. Bob and Leah Fitzherbert. That was part of our Calvary Chapel Yuma team. Here at the Dome of the Rock, just to prove we were there. Here in February 25, 26, here was down at the river before Gateway Park existed. This was at Luz Gonzalez's baptism. That's, anyway, here's Irma Torres and Rosie Hirth and Tess Holcomb. We had dinner, and something I noticed as I go back and look at the pictures, I have a lot of pictures of baptisms, because a baptism, we'll go out and it's a picnic and it's relaxed, and there's all kinds of times to take pictures, and then there's a Bible study, there's worship, and then there's the baptism, and then it's also kind of an outreach, because people see what you're doing. And I remember one time we were baptizing some people, and some little kids came up. What are you guys doing? Well, we told them what we were doing and why we were doing it. So the gospel goes out. So baptisms are always a neat thing. And for that matter, we're going to have a baptism pretty soon. You need to ask Albert when that's going to be. Pastor Albert, that is. Easter time, April 15, 2006. Now this is interesting. I kind of was hoping Gregory had been here. You might not believe it, but that's Gregory. Gregory, he's about that tall now? Gregory's a young man now. And there, Clara and Santiago. Santiago is in heaven, and we'll see him later. In a little while, we're going to see the slab that Santiago in Algodones, the church we planted in Algodones. Santiago is the guy, the reason you walk in there. Albert, did you notice how smooth that concrete is? That's because Santiago. He was a professional at that. And the guys that worked with him, they did an excellent job. 2006 in November, I went to Calcutta and taught at Gospel of Asia, one of their Bible colleges, for 2 weeks. And these were my students. That was a neat experience. We sent a group to Katrina after the storm, devastated New Orleans. We went to New Orleans, and this little lady sitting in the chair, 80-some years old, and her house had been flooded, water clear up to the ceiling. So everything in that house had to be dumped out into the front, had to pull out the drywall, the insulation, the wires, everything, so that the studs could, and the stucco could dry. And so on the third day, Miguel Gonzalez led her to Christ. And kind of a cool thing, you know, Miguel Gonzalez grew up Catholic. His dad was a Catholic priest. So she was Catholic. And so that, you know, sometimes, Lord, I can lead a Catholic to Christ, but sometimes a little extra help, you know, when you know where they're coming from and stuff. But anyway, there's Armando Torres, the Fitzherberts, his sister Luce, and Jack Valentine and myself. So we worked really hard for 3 or 4 days that week, and she accepted the Lord. So that made it all worthwhile. We used to do Christmas parties with the Kiwanis Club and give out gifts and food to kids for a long time. And every kid would get a gift, but 10 kids would get a gift plus a bike. But we gave them, they didn't buy a ticket. We gave them a ticket, and then we'd do a little raffle so 10 kids would get a bike. So that was kind of a fun thing. Vacation Bible School. Over the years, we've done multiple Vacation Bible Schools. Here's David Doucette and Daniel Barilla and some kids, and there's Deborah with a lei on. Another baptism. There's Anne-Marie and Andrew and Rob Fram and Bob Jones. That was June 17th, 2007. Another baptism. I have several pictures of this one, so you might recognize a few of these people here chowing down. You know, fellowship, that's always a good thing. There's Doucette's. Pat didn't like this picture, but I'm not sure if he's leaving or sitting down. Here's Vanessa and Nathan Rice with the baby. This is proof that she had that baby that was conceived in Israel. I just wanted to make sure you knew I was telling you the truth there. This is just one of the people that were baptized at that time. And there's my mom and Rob's mom. We planted a church in Algodones. For the first year, they had church in a dirt slab underneath a tree. Then after the first year, we bought a lot, or started buying a lot, paying, what did we pay? $250 a month. And we paid that, and this last year, we paid that off, okay? So, and when we built that, they said, you can't build anything on it until you've paid $1,000. Well, that didn't take very long. And so we paid $1,000, and then we built a lean-to. So that was the first shade, and that we had church right there. And then we built a slab. That's the slab that Santiago helped pour that slab, and that was there for about a year. And then we had the money put together, and so we never borrowed any money. We just had we made a payment on the land, but we always paid cash. So there's a church down there probably worth $130,000, and it's all paid off. You know, so they don't owe any money. They don't have rent. And we didn't lose any money. We didn't pay a bunch of interest. March 25th, 2008. This was at Civic Center. For several years, we'd go to the Civic Center and do Easter out there, and we'd invite people. And you know what? Mike McIntosh does that, and he has thousands of people come, and they accept the Lord. Man, they flock down there. He does that every Easter. He'll rent SeaWorld. He'll rent the stadium at SeaWorld, and they'll fill that sucker up, and people accept the Lord. We never had one person that I remember ever accept the Lord at Civic Center. So after several years doing that, we stopped doing that. Also, it cost us money to rent, and all the workers, man, that was a lot of work. Getting up really early and getting everything set up, and for not much fruit we didn't see. So, but there, Anne-Marie was the worship leader at that time. My wife was a singer. Jan and Joan sit right here. That you guys were singers and had a piano player. And there's Andrew eating a donut right there in the front. He must be the head usher or something, guard or something. Here, Camp Verde Outreach. Joseph and Ted and Trish went to Camp Verde. Helped Camp Verde. They did an outreach up there, and these guys, we sent a van load up to help do the outreach and to a bunch of kids and stuff in Camp Verde. That's Central Arizona. Back to Algodones. Here's the Reuben that was the pastor for a few years, and his brother Moises. Moises is still the pastor, one of the pastors, one of the Calvary Chapels in Mexicali. And the tall guy is Pete Mallinger. He's my pastor from Calvary Old Central. And then there's myself. We fed kids and did a lot of games and stuff, and there was a few people accept the Lord. Here we did a after service one time, we did a renewing of the vows. Dana and John renewed their vows. And that's not a bad idea. John said that Dana treats him a lot better since that. So if any of you guys are having a problem, maybe you ought to think about that.
He's retired and he's spoiled.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, I thought he was gaining a little weight there. Be careful, John. You'll catch me. One summer we had we were ministering some kids at the project, and we did crafts and games, and I taught a little Bible study. So here I'm teaching a Bible study, and notice there's some adult women there. I would never do that by myself. An adult male with kids, you got to be careful with that. Avoid all appearance of evil, and also avoid all lawsuits. So you really watch that. Here's Father's Day in 2008. So just had some of the people at the Father's Day event. Here's Joel Fletcher, was our youth pastor for a number of years. We supported him as a missionary with Gospel for Asia for 4 or 5 years. Now Joel is on staff at Calvary Chapel, Fort Worth, Dallas, Texas area. He's a youth pastor there and going to school. He's wanting to continue his education. I think he's working on a doctorate degree or something. Here's Kevin O'Neill doing his puppets. Kevin, missionary extraordinaire. Kevin can do puppets in English and Spanish. He can have 4 or 5 puppets, and each one has a different voice. And when someone in the audience makes a comment, he'll take that and go with it. I mean, this guy is sharp and amazing. Some kid might yell out something, and all of a sudden the puppet will talk to that kid in which language, either Spanish or English. John Brown, missionary we supported a number of years in England, his family. Argyle and Rachel, he's from Ethiopia, she's from the United States. They met at Bible College in Hungary. We're good friends of Beth's, and now they have an orphanage back in his home country, Ethiopia. And they fill that orphanage in 2 ways. One thing, they have kids, a bunch of kids, and to nowadays thinking, they have several kids, but they go out in the jungle in Ethiopia. There's some jungle communities, people that if the kid is born, if there's twins, if you don't have your teeth right, or if there's some kind of deformity, it's tribal law. You have to take that baby out in the forest and leave them. And if you don't do that, then they'll take you and the baby out in the forest and leave you. So the only way you can survive is take your baby out and leave it. So the orphanage, they're getting some of those kids that are being left in the orphanage rather than them dying. So they're taking them, feeding them, and leading them to Christ. And Argyle came to the United States once. We took him down, and I wanted to show that picture mainly because that shows Calvary Chapel Algodones before there was anything on it. That was when it was just a lot and a sign. And then I talked about the progression of that. But April 18th, 2009, on a Friday, several of us showed up down at the slab and measured everything out, set up a pattern. I think he called it a jig to build. We had to build our own truss. We wanted to have them built here and sent down. Too much hassle, too much red tape, too much cost. They don't do that in Mexico. We would have bought them in Mexicali and shipped them over. They don't do that. That's not the way they build. So we built them. So had everything measured. We actually, you can see on the plate there, I think that's what it's called. Is that what it's called, Larry? We pre-drilled the holes. And something we did that some of the guys that day said, that's a waste of time. And it was a waste of time if you're a builder. But if you're a non-builder, it wasn't a waste of time. We actually, where the stud would go to the plate, we drilled the holes. We started the holes. So that way you could stick a nail in the hole and hit it. So that way a 12-year-old kid that had never swung a hammer was successful. And guys like me would be hitting it and bending them. But when it's already started, see, it goes in. So it took more time, and if you can have a bunch of novices, and we had 50 people showed up, and only 5 of them really knew anything about building, okay? So most of us were nail benders. So if they were pre-drilled, made it successful. So we did this on Friday, got it all ready. And sometimes, prepping things, get it ready is a good idea. Because in one day, 50 people this is what we did. I was working, and then at the end of the day, all the truss built, all the walls put up, truss put up, and we did about 3/4 of the sheeting on the roof and all the way around the outside. So, in one day, and we should have invited OSHA down. They could have taken videos of what not to do, okay? Because we broke every OSHA law there ever was, but no one was injured. God, to get all that done in one day, what a blessing that was. That was an exciting day. So here's a little while later, August 20th, they're having a church service there. Here, November 29th, 2009, we see Albert and Cynthia at that event, and Joseph leading worship at this Hallelujah party we had out in the parking lot. And we see Lydia pushing that little girl. I don't know about that. Churches, there needs to be outreach. There needs to be fellowship. And sometimes fellowship can be just having fun as a group, as a body of Christ together. This group from our church went out, and there's someplace out in the desert. I have no idea where it's at. But Dave's there. I can see him right there. So if you want to know and go out there, there's a place where people have written their names and all kinds of stuff with rocks out in the desert. And I don't know why other people don't come and mess it up, but they tend to not do it for some reason. But anyway, out in the desert someplace, Calvary Chapel and the Dove are made in rocks out there. And they had a fun day just doing that. July 4th, 2009, here we see Joseph leading worship at Gateway Park at a baptism. August 2009, here this is a picture of my daughter Beth with her dreadlocks right here. And this is at Florence's wedding. She was marrying the pastor. This was after Beth had been there for 14 months, washing her clothes in buckets, cooking on a one-burner stove that sat on top of a 5-gallon propane tank. No electricity a third of the day. Bugs. She had a nice mosquito net that we sent her. And hardest thing that she ever did in her life. But built character. This gal came and joined her for a few weeks or so, or a month or so. This is Nikki. She was 17 at that time. She's Hungarian. And she is the adopted daughter of Phil Metzger. Phil's the pastor of Calvary Budapest, and he's the director of the Bible college there. And Beth was real good friends with them, and so they felt comfortable sending her down. Beth was there, so she went down and was a missionary there. Now, Beth and Nikki's 22 years old, going to a Christian Bible college up here, the one David Jeremiah started, up here in San Diego. That's what Nikki's doing right now. But this summer in August, Beth and Nikki are going to go to Ethiopia to visit Argal and Rachel. They're ready to start a Christian school. And Beth is a certified public school teacher, and she's taught in about 3 different Christian schools. Right now she's the secretary for the Christian school at The Rock, Miles McPherson over there on Point Loma. And so she's learning the administration side of the deal. So she's going to go over and evaluate and kind of give them some ideas what they ought to do. Now, is she going to go over there? I don't know. If the Lord calls her to go over there, she'll go over there. Okay? And so pray for her. Pray for their safety. Obviously, these 2 girls are going to stand out, in Ethiopia. There's a picture of Albert and Cynthia teaching Sunday school. One of the ways that we know that Albert and Cynthia are faithful, they've taught in Sunday school, they started teaching, they became the leader of the Sunday school, and they've done an excellent job and been faithful at that ministry. Here in November 5th, 2010, this is one of those success stories that there's sometimes where as a pastor you're thinking, man, I might as well just quit because it doesn't look like anything's happening. But especially when you go to a pastor's conference, and Mike McIntosh talks about he just went so and stepped off the plane and said, hey, anyone who accept the Lord? And 1,000 people accept the Lord. And this other guy's building a $5 million deal, and Bob Coy says, man, I'm having a problem with my staff. There's 130 of them. That's more people than got in our church. And so that can get you thinking, well, man, maybe I'm not doing anything here. Mike is one of those guys, typically on a Wednesday night, I don't give a salvation message, but the Lord had me do on that night. Mike is a Marine, came and he accepted the Lord on a Wednesday night sitting right out there. And then he came that next Sunday, and he went to both services. And he did that for a long time. He was so hungry. And this was a real salvation. I mean, he was wanting to do the Lord's will. Andrew took him through a discipleship course, and he went to everything we had. He got really involved. And then he met Amber. Amber grew up in our church, and she was a registered nurse. And so he came to us and he said, no, I know how to date in the world, but how do Christians do it? What are Christians supposed to do? So, well, we have a course for that. We got, a dating thing. It's the courting. It's the proper way to do it. So this guy wanted to do it how God wanted to do it. And to me, as a pastor, that's a blessing. That's what it's all about. And she'd been baptized before, but he wanted to get baptized with her before they got married. At the wedding, they wanted communion. They wanted communion at the wedding. They wanted to make it a spiritual thing. They wanted to light the candle, symbolizing, the two separate becoming one flesh. In other words, they wanted, the Bible taught. I've gone and done weddings, and well, don't do this and don't do that, but they wanted Jesus all about the whole deal. And now the Lord's, they're in Okinawa. He's stationed over there. The Lord's blessed him with a little baby. And they're doing well, going to church and growing in the Lord, I'm sure. One of the things, going to, when we were in New York, some of us pastors were asked by the mayor, when we were back in New York after 9/11, an airplane crashed in Queens, killed a bunch of people, and everyone on the airplane died. So they asked for all the survivors to bring hair samples, DNA samples, combs and stuff with hair, to the Civic Center so that they could identify, who was on there and stuff. So the mayor of New York, he asked us pastors to go down there and pray and minister to those people because they're going to be hurting. Well, we got there, and the Red Cross wouldn't let us in. Where's your badge? You guys approved counselors by the Red Cross? No, we don't even know what you're talking about. So they wouldn't let us in. But finally, a pretty high up police guy came, and we were able to tell him, hey, look, this is the mayor. Look at our badges. The mayor asked us to come. And so he got us in toward the end, but it wasn't very effective because we couldn't get in. So that's what got me thinking, well, we need to get certified in some things so we can get in. When there's emergencies, so we got a team that's been trained in CPR, that's trained in CERT, so that if the county emergency management calls us in, guess what? We get to go past the line. We get to go past the tape and help. Because many times, right then, those people are hurting, they're in need, and the police and all the medical people, there's not enough of them. Back in Oklahoma, just this last week, there was not enough police, not enough medical to take care of all the needs. CERT team, trained, can go in and do some stuff, but also those people need Jesus. And that's the time, some people think they can do it all by themselves. When everything falls apart, your house is flattened, you just lost everything. At that time, there's some old stubborn guys all of a sudden, maybe I do need the Lord. Maybe I can't do this on my own. And so there's a season right there where they're kind of open. And so that's why we did that. Here's a tree blew down in front of my neighbor's house, and he had heart problems, and he couldn't get out. His cars were locked in there. And so in one day, guys from our church, we went and took chainsaws, and we cut all that off so he could get his cars out. So what an act of love. This guy that, 60s and heart attack, he used to be able to do a lot of stuff, but he couldn't do anything because of the heart attack. But tears. He was just overwhelmed that, we weren't that close with him as a neighbor, but all those other people were strangers. Why would you do that? Well, the love of Jesus. Here's Pastor Bob Claycamp, myself, and Pastor Aaron at the church in Algodones. If you haven't been down there lately, you ought to go down and see all the things that Albert's done. He's done some pretty amazing things. Pastor Albert, since he's been there, Pastor Albert came from Calvary Ensenada, and Pastor Aaron came from Ensenada, and he was the first graduate from the Bible College in Ensenada, the Calvary Chapel Bible College in Ensenada, and this is the first wedding he's performing, the first wedding he'd performed, but the first wedding of the church in Algodones. This couple is getting married. Here, Caesar is getting baptized, another Marine getting baptized. So I like to dunk those Marines. That's a good thing. So if you're a Marine, you haven't been dunked, you know. I got a pool. I'm ready. You just have to accept the Lord if you haven't. Last Easter, March 13th, right here, we had the kids got up and did a performance, and that's always a blessing. You know, some of the kids, they quoted verses and so they sang some songs, and that's always a blessing. And we have other video or things, but I just want to show that one. I'll just close with this last one. This is a picture of Mary, myself, and Chelsea. We took Chelsea down to Honduras, and she's going to be down in Honduras for a long time. This statue of Jesus overshadows the capital of Tegucigalpa, is the capital, and so Jesus is looking down over there, and you know, sometimes some groups think that, you know, that's going to be a blessing to them, but they need Jesus in their heart, don't they? It's a pretty statue, but that's all it is. It ain't going to help them any. They need Jesus in their heart, and John Beard is about teaching them the Word of God. Faith comes by hearing the Word of God, and so really pray for Rancho Oasis. I was really impressed about what they're doing in Honduras, and the things that they live without. In other words, Mary probably will never go back there again. I know that Mary will never live there. Okay, and I don't know that I could live there, and I guess I couldn't because she wouldn't be there. But I might go visit. But mosquitoes, and Mary got bit from head to toe with mosquitoes, and the first 2 nights we couldn't sleep because of mosquitoes and gnats. You know, and I'd knock them off, and I'd get under my sheet, but then I get too hot, pull it back out. So, or maybe I'd go to sleep under there, and then at night, you know, pull off. I wake up. So, after about the third day, second day, we asked, hey, or we told them, hey, I'm having a hard time sleeping with all the bugs. And they say, well, did you eat, did you take those garlic pills? Yeah, we're taking twice a day. But they said, well, here's the mosquito net. They had mosquito nets, but you know, we didn't ask for one, so they didn't offer one. So then we slept. It was a good trip, and I think it was worthwhile to get Chelsea down there. It's going to be a life-changing experience for Chelsea. I know we encouraged John and Marilyn, and they're just doing a tremendous work. Marilyn is deaf, so she has a huge handicap, and here, you know, just that would keep most people from doing many things. But here she's a missionary, and she's a trooper. They have, 4 kids? And their 4 kids are little. Toby's 2 years old, 3 years old, and he was just a handful. So pray for him, because it's hard work down there, but they're doing a great job with the people that live up in the mountain villages and just live out in the woods and up there in the mountains. Let's pray.